Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben, I'm here with Meg, and we're continuing our discussion of the new Jedi Order series. Let me give you a quick breakdown if you're here for the first time, you haven't seen our previous podcasts. The new Jedi Order is a series of Star Wars Legends books before 2014, before Disney took over. They were published from 1999 to 2003. And they feature 19 adult novels, also as well short stories, and a couple of comic books. It is a time of in the Star Wars saga where the events take place from 21 to 25 years after the original trilogies. This is the time where Luke Skywalker is rebuilding the new Jedi Order. The Jedi Knights are in full swing, and this is where a new intergalactic invaders come to our galaxy. First of all, Meg, very happy to have you here again. How are you? Tell me, how has your week been going?
Yeah, I'm so glad to be back again and on such a beefy, meaty book this time.
Mm-hmm.
It's been good. Still trucking along, reading my prequels novels, feeling a little bit like I may never get out of the prequels, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I remember we spoke about it briefly before that. I think the prequel novels were largely responsible for me embracing the larger like clone era storytelling, the prequel movies, because there was we were saturated by really awesome content, right? We had video games, we had comic books, and we had the novels to support the whole story. So it really felt like one great story being told.
Yeah.
Meg, before I catch us up with our previous book that you and I discussed, just throwing a general question out there, because from your reviews, I know that you're very passionate about the new Jedi Order book series, and this particular book is going to have a lot of key moments for us to discuss. Just throwing a general question out there, what is the difference for you personally between a like and dislike for a book? What constitutes a good story?
Yeah, so I think for me, it has to stick with me in a way. Like I could really enjoy the book while I'm reading it, but if 6 months down the road I'm having trouble remembering it, then it sort of makes me go back and rethink like how I felt about the book, because I guess for me the Star Wars books that I love the most are the ones that resonate with me. And then even sometimes I may not even have enjoyed it, but it still stuck with me in the way that I go, all right, I think that really accomplished something if years later I'm still thinking of these events and like these scenes in the story, even though it's been, years since I opened up the book and read it.
So in a way, it's not that the story just needs to be pleasant for you, right? Or surprising in an exciting, kind of thrilling, positive way. It just has to be memorable, right? If I'm getting it right.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of my top Star Wars books, I'm like, oh, I love this book. And then there are some of them where I'm like, this was really well done. Maybe I didn't personally like think it was a happy, lovely story, but it stuck with me in some way. And I like couldn't stop thinking about it.
That's a very interesting answer that I honestly didn't anticipate, because for me personally, I'm very different from you. For me, the experience in the moment is very important. And, when I'm reading it, I have to be with the characters and experiencing what they're feeling. And even if I forget it years after, as I'm showing guys is the case with the new Jedi Order books, sometimes you come in because it's fresh in your memory and you remind me content, and it kind of brings me back why I enjoyed it initially. But for me, it's always in the moment kind of thing. I have to like it here and now. And the reason I'm asking this question is because recently I got this little debate on Twitter with fans about the latest Prey movie that I didn't enjoy it. But I said, you know what, guys, when we're collectively discussing a book or a film, we need to, or I think personally, it's a good practice to separate I don't like versus bad, because there's plenty of movies that I didn't like personally, but I enjoy and I understand their historical importance. And the movie I always bring as an example is A Clockwork Orange, which a movie for me, it was not pleasant to watch. It's a very heavy theme, but I understand its cultural significance. And I'm sure you have stories and favorite books and movies like that as well, right?
Yeah. Well, another Kubrick one, like I feel like 2001: A Space Odyssey was so influential, but there are bits of that movie that I find so difficult to watch. But at the same time, I'm like, that was an achievement. That was something amazing, but I also don't 100% like all of it.
Yeah, I totally follow you. I think the last psychedelic sequence where he is going through symbological death and rebirth, and obviously we as viewers can interpret that scene in various ways, but it just goes on and on and on. And he really, beyond driving the point home, he just like literally drills it into you. And you're right, it's a little bit heavy to watch. But anyway, guys, we're here for the new Jedi Order. Let me quickly summarize where Meg and I left off in our previous podcast, and we'll continue with our book for this video. So we left off with The Edge of Victory Rebirth by Greg Keyes, and we ended up seeing the raging war continuing. And our young couple of friends, Anakin Solo, the son of Leia and Han Solo, him and his dear friend Tahiri, they find a new tactic to find their opponents, the Yuuzhan Vong. At the same time, Mara Jade's illness seems to be cured. She's fine now. And we end up the book with a moment of hope where Luke Skywalker's son, Ben Skywalker, is finally born. And at the same time, there is a foreboding, foreshadowing kind of ending where the New Republic no longer officially supports Luke's new Jedi Order, and Luke and Mara are outcasts, and they end up being on the run as the war continues. So this is where we left off, and today, guys, we're continuing with our next book called Star by Star by Troy Denning, which was released in October of 2001. This one takes place 27 years after the events of the original movies. So now we're 2 years into this war. And we start the novel with a very dramatic opening. We see an attack on a Corellian cruiser called the Nebula Chaser. These Yuuzhan Vong invaders who have biological weapons and biologically grown armor and even their ships, because these aliens there don't believe in anything technological or machinery or robots like that. They hate and despise this stuff. And now they bring on board of this ship during this attack their new secret weapon, the Voxen. And what the Voxen are, they're genetically created reptile hounds who are force sensitive, and they were specifically designed to go after and exterminate all of the Jedi. So on board of the ship, there are two Jedi twins, Alima and Numarar. And as they fight off this invasion, there's a hectic scene going on there, a lot of action. One of the sisters, Numa, is murdered, and her sister manages to discover her body. So the first question that I have here, this is one first portion of this novel, which to me was very, very impactful. And the question I have, Meg, is what was your personal impression with this intro and the first reaction to the Jedi twin sisters?
I thought it was a really good way to start the novel because it makes the threat of the Voxen feel so real, because you're discovering the Voxen as Alima and Numa do, that, you know, they're being chased, they're like, they can sense something sensing them, and they're like, what is going on? Because the Yuuzhan Vong are completely absent from the Force. And just that moment, like when Numa is killed and Alima is like, gets her body, it's just like, we've never met these girls before. They're completely new to us, but you still, as the reader, are completely heartbroken for Alima, who loses her sister, like, right in front of you. I feel like it made that new threat, like the Yuuzhan Vong threat, it's instantly become stepped up. Like these Voxen, we don't know anything about them other than they use the Force to hunt, but they're scary. They're really scary.
Mm-hmm. I'm drawing the parallel immediately with a more recent The High Republic, where we're also, spoiler alert, guys, minor, but nonetheless a spoiler. There's also some kind of set of entities or creatures or whatever they are, race, if you like, who are also antagonizing our Jedi, and the Jedi completely caught unprepared. So obviously there's inspiration there. And just like yourself, I remember when I was started reading this book, I imagined to myself, what a great way to start a novel with a bang. Just like the original Star Wars movie, you're in the middle of the events and you're trying to figure the story out as things are happening. But the entire success of that part of the book, for me, depended on the strength of the characters. Because if we didn't care for these two twins, it would just be another exhilarating action scene. And I'm personally never there just for action. If all I'm experiencing is a bunch of blaster bolts flying around and people dropping, I will forget it tomorrow. But now I'm personally invested because these two sisters, and one of them goes obviously through a very traumatic experience. She loses her twin, and you immediately can't help but feel you sympathize with her, and you feel for this character. So I also wanted to like kind of broaden the question outside of Star Wars. Do you generally prefer your books, let's say, in a Tolkien fashion, where once upon a time, and you're given the backdrop and you're given a little bit of lore, and then your adventurers set on their quest and you're there witnessing it right from the beginning? Or you're the type of reader who enjoys to be thrown in the thick of events and try to figure out what is going on?
I'm a big Tolkien fan. I always like, the lore, but I think that starting right in the middle of events is sort of my favorite way, because instead of getting bogged down in like descriptions and setting the seed, it's sort of you're thrown in and you have to figure things out as you go. And that is a lot of times my favorite way, because I feel like I would rather figure things out as we go and not be like overloaded with backstory and lore, and then the other way, even though I do love that approach a lot of times when it's well done. But I think dropping me in the middle of action is usually my favorite.
Yeah. I've noticed that throughout the years, more and more, I'm sort of a fan of these being thrown in the middle of action stories. And my analysis of it sort of started, I was reading books way before I was playing video games. But when I started gaming and I got into the role-playing genre through the Final Fantasy VII, when it originally came out on PlayStation 1, I'm like, oh, what is this? I'm learning English here. I'm learning a whole new gaming genre, which almost is very similar to textbook reading. That's what we compared to back in the day, because obviously those games weren't voice acted, and they were very rich with lore and characters and a lot of questing and, dozens of hours of gameplay. When I started specifically looking at the Final Fantasy games, I really enjoyed where Hironobu Sakugachi, the creator of them, from part 1 to part 9, even to part 10, when you start the game, you're in the middle of things. He doesn't burden the audience with too much lore, where it's like Game of Thrones, like 25 different family names and a bunch of factions here, and this guy's trying to backstab this guy. It could be very overwhelming for people, especially for those who are not familiar with epic fantasy. When you look at the Final Fantasy route, I'm like, wow, it's just an action scene. These kids are trying, Final Fantasy 9, this boy's trying to kidnap the princess. What the heck is going on? But there's not too much of it, and you just so interested in following the action, and then slowly he builds the world for you.
Yeah.
Back to the book. So we understand that obviously the war is happening on all fronts, right? And finally, the Republic, the New Alliance, begins to gain ground across the war theater. They land some major victories. They start feeling more confident, like finding, okay, we can start to oppose these Vong enemies in full force. We understand what they are now. Now enters Lando Calrissian, right? And he proposes his new semi-solution. He's like, I'm still an entrepreneur. I'm not part of the military, but I also have something that could help you out in the battle. And it's his Vong hunter droids that he creates, right? He has his own company. I don't remember if it was like backed up by the government or not. He stayed independent. Regardless, he has his new military equipment to help the Jedi fight. And at the same time, the Republic and these new droids, this new creation from Lando Calrissian, it's a direct affront to everything that the Yuuzhan Vong believe, because it's no, you can't have droids. It's anti-religious. It's a sacrilege, and they can't have it. And to put more salt on the wound, these Vong hunter droids, they destroy the Yuuzhan Vong Vondun Crab armor, which they present a serious threat for the first time. And Vong, they're not having it. They're not happy with it. So, Meg, the next question I have for you is in regards to our dear character. How do you feel about Lando's role up to this point? his initial interactions with our heroes in New Jedi Order series, and now we're in this book where he's taking a much more direct role.
Yeah, so Lando showed up in Vector Prime basically, I think, to introduce a lot of things. Introduce the Vong because his world was one of the first ones that was attacked. He also sends Han and Chewie and Anakin off on the mission that leads to Chewie's death. So Lando was there being a businessman, but just sort of as a conduit for plot, it felt like. Like he's not actively engaging in plot, he's just sort of plot needs to go in certain directions and Lando's there and it all works together. I think it works very well having Lando pop up now with these hunter droids because he's always been a businessman. He's always going from scheme to scheme. And I think after losing his mining planet or whatever it was, that it makes a lot of sense to me that he'd be like wanting to take the war to the Yuuzhan, but he's still wanting to make money in the process. And I think when I first saw the droids, I was like, why did no one think of this sooner? But then I also was like, it's only been 2 years. Like it takes time to develop these things. And even 2 years may be pretty fast to develop that.
And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I was worried at first that they were a little overpowered, but I think having them only in limited quantities helps because it's not like we see 50,000 droids. We just see like, I think there's 2 on the ship with the Jedi strike team. And like when Lando goes and presents them to the military, he's got like 10. Like it's not like he's rolling in droids right now.
Yeah, it's like General Grievous's personal guard, which are they're obviously way more capable. They could go at it with the Jedi, but because they're few in number, they're probably very expensive to produce. You could argue it makes it more interesting. So you actually started going into the second question that I wanted to ask. How did you feel about how Republic addressed their problem, right? This impending war, and how the rate at which they were developing countermeasures and tactics and also military equipment. Do you believe that it was convincing up to this point in the book, or it felt a little bit slow?
It did feel slow to me. It felt like they were on like 2 steps behind the Vong for most of the story. And I guess in the first year of the war, I could buy that, but it felt a little like get with the times, people, like pick up the pace, especially like Balance Point and the Edge of Victory books, where you're just like, why are you letting them beat you? Like, come on. So I guess I did appreciate by Star that it's like, oh, they're doing better, even if the way Star by Star ends is a bit like, oh, now it's even worse.
Yeah. You know, to be honest with you, on my end, I didn't have an issue with it because I guess for me personally, the Vong seems such a bizarre and different concept. Like, how do you fight enemies that have these bioweapons and armor that is able to counter even lightsabers? It's pretty scary and intimidating. And it kind of makes sense that it would take an entrepreneur like Lando Calrissian to step in and be a lot more incentivized.
Yeah.
Because if previously other Republic alliance, they're still bickering, we understand there's a lot of politicking going around and bureaucracy. This guy is like, you know what? I was here standing on the sidelines. Now my planet is being attacked. I'm not having it. Yeah. I'm joining the war. He's like, he's basically sidelines and dodges all the legal avenues, let's say. And he's like, no, we got to deliver now. And knowing Lando Calrissian, when he puts his mind to something, you best believe he's going to accomplish it. Yes. So to me, it made sense. Like, okay, this is where they're going to crank it in because our hero Lando Calrissian is stepping in. He has a lot more incentives to do so. So to me, it was kind of on the convincing side. So we continue now with our new alliance in the Republic and the Jedi are finally making a dent in this war. And our Jedi healer, Master Silgar, I think Silgal. That's her name. Silgal, right? She's a Mon Calamari Jedi healer, and she studies this Voxin. She's trying to figure out how to counteract that. And she figures out that they're actually a modified genetic clones of creatures who are natives from a planet, Merkur. And Merkur first pops up in Timothy Zahn's original Thrawn trilogy, right, where he's on this planet, he picks up these lizards, and these lizards are called the Yassalamir, and he uses them to basically create a complete vacuum in the Force around him, and he uses them as shield. So neither Luke Skywalker can sense him, neither Mara Jade, a former Emperor's Hand, can go after them, which was, again, once very weird, very odd, but for the book itself, it kind of worked. So what were your thoughts on the expanded universe redefining the mechanics of the Force and its concepts and how it works?
I thought it was, I guess, it made sense to me learning, I guess with Merkur, you learn that there are predators on there called the Vornskers, and that's what the Yuuzhan have used to breed the Voxen, and the Vornskers use the Force to hunt. So then I guess it makes sense in an evolutionary sense that if they use the Force to hunt, there would be creatures that would try to find a way to negate the Force, and that's like the Ysalamiri. I guess it works so well in the Thrawn trilogy. When I think about it closely, I'm like, that's very convenient, but I'll buy it. But I guess I assumed as soon as Talon Card in Edge of Victory Conquest used his Vornskers to search out where the Jedi students were hiding on Yavin 4, like, someone's gonna take that information and use it. There's something that could find Jedi. I guess I'm just a little surprised that they were able to do it so quickly, because I don't even think it's been a year since Conquest, or maybe only a year, and already they've created this creature, interbred this creature with their Yuuzhan stuff to make this like Jedi hunter.
I remember for me, it was a lot easier to accept the Voxen than the Yassalamir. I remember reading, Thrawn Trilogy was one of the first books that I read, and I'm the type of reader, when I enjoy the story in general, it's very easy for me to mute out all the little nitpicks that I have. Because the overall experience is so enjoyable, it's so fun. Like, why would I whine or complain about this one little thing? But I remember reading about the Yassalamir, and the location itself, Merkur, was really, really compelling to me, and it made all the sense in the world why other creatures would use the Force to hunt. Right? Even if you make a case for the Force that being this spiritual thing, right? This magic that you're shouldn't use trivially, right? That it's something that it's a spiritual part of you. Well, if human beings in that universe can use it or have access to it, then perhaps animals can too.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're all creations of God, of the Holy Spirit, or this, supreme being, whatever you choose to interpret the Force as. It made sense. But it made a little less sense that I can completely hide from the Force, push it away, and that's why I couldn't buy Palpatine in prequels. I'm like, he's hiding in the Force. Like, what the hell is these guys as a Jedi, the most experienced ones, including Yoda, are parading right in front of his face, and they never bat an eye on him? Like, come on, dude. But once again, the story was so enjoyable, it was easy to accept. But with Voxens, I was fully invested, and I felt scared for my fellow Jedi, because these are completely ferocious hounds, these animals. But you could believe that they're sensing the Jedi. It's one creature to another. Like, it just felt scary to me. Now we're going to move into one of the topics that are very dear and near to you, Luke Skywalker. Right? I've heard some of your comments in Luke's stance in the war and in his role as a Jedi Master. So here, at this point in the story, Luke finally decides to make a proactive stance on this war. He organizes a strike team to go to the Vong ship, world ship, and to get rid of this Voxen problem. He decides to go himself as a responsible leader. He says, I'm the one, I gotta go. But his nephew, Anakin Solo, argues against it. He says, look, you're too valuable. Without you, where would we be? You're still the master among us. You're your spiritual guide. You're the leader of this order. We can't risk you. So Anakin manages to convince his uncle, and he volunteers to go himself.
Mhm.
And there's a very crucial part of the novel where Han Solo, his father, he warns them against the danger. He warns Luke, he warns his kids, and he says, I'm not, well, after Chewie, after what happened before, I'm completely unwilling to risk all of my 3 kids. Like, get the hell out of here. This is not happening. Because he's still dealing with the loss of his dear friend. But they end up organizing the group. All of the 3 solos are enlisted. But also Lando Calrissian sees that they need all the help that they could get. And he also takes away from his latest shipment of these Vong hunter droids, and he gives them a pair of those as well.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question is, what are your thoughts on Luke's Jedi Order mandate prior to this mission? And what do you think has changed his mind?
So Luke, before this, in the new Jedi Order, he's been very reluctant to take action. And that brings him into conflict with Kype Durran and people like that who want to rush off and engage the Vong. And Luke's more of a wait and see person, which to a certain extent I understand, but then it frustrates me where I'm like, Luke, you need to decide something. And so he finally decides. He finally decides on action here. I was a little surprised that he was so willing to go for military action, like this strike team. And then in addition to the strike team, he's now perfectly fine with the Jedi forming starfighter squadrons and working with the New Republic military. I was a little surprised about that because I feel like, I don't know, and this may not be correct, but my impression of Luke from like the Bantam era stories onwards is that while he takes New Republic support, he does to a certain extent want to remain removed from them. Like he's willing to help them, but he doesn't want to be completely controlled by them. But I could see where like this Voxen threat is so extreme to the future of the Jedi. Like it could wipe them all out, that like they have to tackle this. They have to go to Merkur. They have to kill the Voxen Queen, who's like the prototype of all these Voxen. I did, and this isn't Luke, this is Han. I did side with Han a little here, where I could see how the loss of Chewie and then Leia being grievously wounded in Balance Point would make him want to like clutch his family really close. Mm-hmm. And I guess thinking back to like World War II, I do have a problem with them allowing all 3 of the Solo kids to go, as well as like Saba Sabatine, who's the just like the
Barabel Jedi.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They allow all like her son and his 2 sisters to go, and like that could be an entire family wiped out. And mm-hmm. So that was one bit where I was like, I'm not sure about letting like entire families go on this mission. You just hold one back in case.
Yeah. You know, I sort of understood that at this point in the war, desperate measures call for desperate actions. You know, it felt like the Jedi specifically are so backed up in the corner that Luke starts to realize, like, look, we're not gonna overcome this battle with love and peace messages because clearly Vong are not interested in it, and we are warriors. We're a warrior order. We're supposed to go there and protect the weak. That's what we're supposed to do. And to be honest with you, I was completely fine with Luke not taking a more proactive role up to this point, because to me, as a fan of the Last Jedi, this is what I see in Luke. You know, he understood the hubris of the Jedi before him. He understood what they felt. And like you said, he wasn't willing to court the idea of being a lapdog for even the New Alliance.
Yeah.
His sister's part of it. And he's like, no, we need to have a separation of state and church. We're the Jedi. We fulfill a different function here. We need complete autonomy, even though we work in service of the new Jedi, New Alliance.
Yeah.
So, he's kind of an observer from afar. He's like, no, 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 let's not make any, actions that we didn't think through. He's more cautious. I think he was being a Jedi in the full sense of the word. He's analyzing, he's judging the situation. But here he comes to a crucial point. He says, we can't prolong anymore. Now that we have the initiative, let's go full force in it. But how did you feel about his nephew, a 16-year-old Anakin Solo? His argument convinces a Jedi Master. How did that play out in your mind?
I was a little surprised that they was like, he was okay, I'm willing to agree with you and let you be in charge here, because yeah, 16 years old, it makes sense to me to send younger people on this mission, because I think the whole point of, them getting into Yuuzhan Vong territories, they need to be captured and make it look like these are people who could be captured. But 16 is, in my mind, like, you're still a kid. And that's a lot of responsibility to put on his shoulders, even if he thinks he's capable of withstanding that.
Yeah, I felt that the case for that was George Lucas, who himself he gravitated towards young man's journey, young person's journey, right? Daisy Ridley, she's 19 when she stars in TFA. Mark Hamill, he portrays a 19-year-old, right? They're all in their late teens. They're young people who are overcome insurmountable odds and become more than their former selves. They become heroes in the truest sense of the word. So I felt that this was the general theme here, even though I agree with you, 15 or 16 could be like, no, kid, you're sitting this one out. Like, Jaina, you had a little bit of like flight experience there. You got your ass almost blasted out of the sky. You're sitting this one out. You're sitting home. Okay, daddy and mommy are going to handle the situation. But you kind of understand that the authors were excited about the new generation of the Jedi taking up the mantle, passing the baton and saying we're capable, we're doing this right now. Before we move on with discussing further story, at this point, when you were reading it, any premonitions, danger, spider senses, something is about to happen to our heroes? Like you mentioned, we have the whole Barrable family, Saba Sabatine, her kid, and his sisters are there, but also all of the three Solos.
Yes. I was worried. I was very worried. Even the first time I read this, I was worried. I guess I didn't think they'd kill a Solo, but I felt like everyone else, especially since a lot of people on this strike team are new characters to us, I sort of was like, I'm guessing they're expendable crewmen, that this was not going to come easily to them, this victory, and that they were going to go through a very tough time. But I guess I was not expecting any of the Solos to go out in a blaze of glory, because I guess in my mind, I'm like, they're Solos, they're safe. Nothing will happen to them.
Yeah. When I was reading it, once again, Saba Sabatine and the Barrable Jedi, they did not feel like just exotic creatures sprinkled in our familiar Star Wars universe just to fit the mold, fit the genre. They felt like characters that I cared about. Her kid and the rest of them, and they're so invested in this mission. And like we mentioned before, the two twin sisters, the Twi'leks, right? Alemarar and her twin, all of these are such well-rendered characters that I honestly didn't want to lose any of them. But I also didn't get ahead of myself and try to like analyze. I never tried to guess the ending. I sort of read on autopilot. I don't try to connect the dots or like, oh, this is probably what's going to happen. I know a lot of fans enjoy doing that. Like, for example, my younger brother's wife, Angela, when she watches a lot of these shows, like right now he's showing her Game of Thrones, and she enjoys connecting these dots to see where it will lead. And oftentimes she's right on the money. But with me, I was reading it on autopilot, but like yourself, I wasn't thinking we're going to lose anybody significant, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, so Chewie, yeah, he's kind of sort of staple of Star Wars, but he's whatever, he's Chewie.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have anything to say in the films. He's just there. He's a presence. He's gone. They're showing us that there's a sense of danger, and some of our heroes could be vulnerable, but that's as far as it went. So we continue the story. As we said, the strike team is assembled. all of the 3 Solo kids are enlisted. We also get Tanel Ka, the young Jedi Twi'lek twin. She's also there. We have Anakin's dear friend, Tahir Rivela. We have Rainar Thul. We have Zek. 2 big characters, right? They start off in this book, or as they start early in the young Jedi children's books, and they later on grow into very important characters in this universe. We have Zek. We have Lobaka, right? Chewie's nephew, who is also a young Jedi Knight. And we also have Alemarar. Lando acts as a New Republic traitor. He says, like, look, he brings all the captive Jedi as a tribute for his world to be safe. He makes a deal with the Yuuzhan Vong. He says, look, I captured all of these young Jedi scum, and you could take them off my hands. Just please, let's strike a deal. Leave my planet alone. So the ploy works. Once on board of the ship, our strike team manages to escape with the help of Lando Calrissian's hunter droids. And it's the ship that is orbiting the planet Merkur. So they meet and they liberate the Dark Jedi, Lomi Plo and Welk, who assist the Jedi. My question is, Lando's continued involvement with the mission, how do you prefer him more? As a general that we've seen his role before versus a weapon supplier? How does he work better as a character?
I think Lando's good at whatever he does because he has a very like administrative mind. I think he was probably a better general maybe than Han because I think he has a better sense of what's going on. But I really like Han. I really like Lando the businessman, Lando the weapon supplier, Lando the, you know, I own a planet and we do mining. It just ties back into what we see of Lando in The Empire Strikes Back. Like, he's good at being a bureaucrat. He's good at business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also, it makes sense that he kind of sheds his role as part of the New Republic military because, once again, he pulls on his less than legal strings and he manages to get just stuff done.
Yeah.
Screw all of this bureaucracy, especially in the middle of war. I really enjoy. He's a lot more effective character and a integral component of the whole heroes unit in the Star Wars saga. He's like, I'm going to go through my channels and get this thing done.
Yeah.
We also have Lomi Plo from the Young Jedi Knight series, who was involved in the Shadow Academy, and he's reintroduced in the New Jedi Order. Once again, what was your interaction with that? I don't know if you read the Young Jedi Knight series before that time, but how did you feel that you have characters here that were created in previous Legends books travel now and being introduced here?
I liked it because it felt like they're not just a one-off. Like, they still have a role to play. They're going to keep coming back up in the story. And I liked how Lomi Plo and Welk were used here, that they're on the Merkur world ship and they're heading towards their goal and they're like, oh, we sense Jedi in danger. And they like risk it to go and help them and free them and then find out they're dark Jedi. So then it sort of sets up some arguments within the group that, you know, already they're starting out on their mission and they're not in accord on things. Like, we risked it to help them and they're dark Jedi. Like, they're not even one of us. I just think it's like one of the first examples of seeing how the closeness of their group is starting to fall apart under pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also enjoyed Lomi because just from the marketing perspective, it's such a great incentive to go into other Star Wars book series. But at the same time, it's such a great reward for people who have been reading other books before that, because it didn't feel like a plug or an Easter egg. It might to somebody who is just getting into this book and he's aware that this character existed somewhere before, or for someone who never knew who this character is, it could be like, oh, yeah, it's just a random side character. But it's such a great gift to somebody. It's like, hey, I remember, you know, from my childhood, I used to read this Young Jedi Knight series, and now this character is here. It just reiterates how large this universe is and how events intertwine and merge with one another. But also we have Alemarar's new Jedi Order journey, which grows beyond that series and goes into the legacy, where she reappears and becomes a major character. And I wanted to ask your opinion on, in retrospect, how you feel about Alemarar's character and the fact that she stars in New Jedi Order and travels over to the Legacy series. And why do you think she's so popular with fans?
I think because she's like a very angry person, especially in the legacy book. She's very angry, but it's like you can understand that. It's like she increasingly becomes a more chaotic and just like bad person. But when you follow her every step of the way, her journey makes sense. Like you may go, oh, that's not the right thing, Olema. Oh, that's a bad thing. But like, so I guess she's compelling.
Yeah.
Like as her story progresses, it gets worse and worse, but it makes sense and you want to find out what happens to her because, starting with the death of her sister, she's personable. And it sort of shows how events can, like, I don't know, these young Jedi can just fall apart and from the things that they've lived through, I guess for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her fall to the dark side is so gradual, and to me, she was so relatable. Every single encounter I had with her, I so desperately wanted to believe that she will be redeemed, because
Yeah.
I felt her pain of losing her sister. I felt the traumatic experience and body disfigurement, this crazy stuff that she go through is just so relatable. You're not presenting to the reader this cardboard villain like all the comic book to screen adaptations are. I am Thane. I'm just gonna, I want balance the universe. It's so redundant. Where when you're reading a multi-series books, and especially it goes from 19 book series and goes into legacy era, you live with those characters really. You
Yeah.
grow to love them and invest them. And when then something tragic and terrible happens to them, you also feel the trauma of it, and you learn to let go of your favorite characters because eventually your things just resolve in a way that you didn't anticipate or want. And that's what it is. And has such an enduring and staying power when you lived with books for so many years. That's why I understand a lot of expanded universe fans that they feel so upset and angry with Disney. They're like, hey, why are you guys stopping it? Why can't you like just divert it and make a multiverse kind of like case and just give us more of those books? I understand that sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like when you've spent years with characters, it's really hard to give them up.
Yeah. So our bearable Jedi, Tessar Sabatine, and his cousins, Tessar and Krasov, they charge forward. They jump into action. A lot of events happen on the ship. Some of our Jedi, including both of Lando's Vong droids, they're gone. They're out of commission. They're dead. Lobaka himself, Chewie's Jedi nephew, the Wookiee, he's also injured. And the Jedi don't seem to have an escape plan.
No.
So what they need to do is steal a Tachyon flyer. So the next question I have is, did you feel that, first we're introduced to Voxen in this book. It's their first appearance, but did you feel that their effectiveness versus the Jedi was well-founded and well-developed in the book?
I felt for me, they were so new that the way that they were such a threat and able to take so many Jedi out made sense to me because it's like every time they encounter them, it almost seems like they learn something new about them. Like in the first encounter with Numa and Alema, you learn that like not only could they use the Force to hunt, but they could like spit this acid. And then it's like each encounter with them on the Merker world ship, we learn a little bit more about them. We learn a little bit more about them. And so it just, for me, it felt realistic that they were this huge threat because for so much of the, for pretty much the whole story, they're an unknown. And it's like they may think they know something about them, but then they have an encounter with them and they learn something more and learn something more. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess they start off the strike mission knowing, each hour that progresses, the chance of us succeeding gets lower and lower and lower.
Yeah.
Then once they're on the world ship, it's like a maze. There's all these different environments. They're lost. They don't know where they're going. So like those hours are ticking away and their chance of success gets less and less, which like starts to wear on them mentally. And then all these like ways that they're falling apart get worse and worse and worse. And Anakin's mad at Jason, and Jason's having trouble holding them all together. And they're like shattering into these groups. And it's like so upsetting to read, not just the deaths, but the way that like the discord is growing between them. And I think the Voxen are like a symbol of that too, like always stalking them, always threatening them.
Yeah, the constantly throughout the book, there's mounting tension and the stakes get higher and higher. And the one parallel comparison I could make is the James Cameron's sequel, Aliens, the xenomorph, right? When they go inside of that station, right, where the not the immigrants, so the colonists are, right? They go descend into the colony and they start going through the tunnels. With each passing moment, they get more disoriented, they get more phobia, they get attacked, their team is dismantled. I felt a very similar parallel, almost like I constantly comment on this. Throughout the new Jedi Order series, there's a lot of horror, grim, dark literature moments there, right? Which it's an adjustment period where you feel like, hold on a second, how did we go from space opera and a hero's journey to something as dark as this? But I actually got to appreciate it, especially in this book, because once again, what pulls you in, it's the characters that you care about. Yeah. So, as we said, the tension is mounting here. Young Anakin Solo is severely wounded in battle. And he gives his team reasons to be left behind. He says, I'm going to be the one to hold off the Vong. You continue. Yeah. Like, it's a classic trope you see like in The Three Musketeers and other classic literature, when one of the heroes is like, no, I'm staying behind. I'm taking this burden. You guys move forward. And Anakin falls in battle.
Yeah.
He, at the same moment, shows complete mastery of the Force. He turns into a white light. He has oneness with the Force. The strike team is devastated. They move on forward with the mission because the task has got to be complete, and they go after the Voxen queen. Jason is a self-appointed new leader. He kills the queen. The Jedi escape on the frigate that they managed to steal. But not Jason. He's lured out of the main group, and he's captured by Nomanor, our infiltrator, our spy, with the help of our very mysterious little Yoda kind of sort of creature, Vergiri, which we're going to have tons of stuff to discuss in future books. But anyway, I just described the climax of this book, very dramatic events. Meg, Anakin's fall. Did it feel like a well-planned and executed sacrifice, or did it feel more like it was there for shock value?
It felt like a little bit of both, because as soon as Anakin got wounded and then wasn't willing to stop, wasn't willing to wait and heal, just kept pushing through it, I was like, oh, this is not going to end well. Anakin had a problem in the previous books, especially the Edge of Victory duology, of being reckless. And I feel like here his death is a direct result of him being reckless, that his sister's threatened, he rushes in to save her, and he's horribly wounded. And then because he's not willing to slow down and try to heal, he just keeps getting worse and worse and worse until they make a play against the Voxen Queen. It fails, and he realizes that the only way the rest of them can get out alive is if he makes a last stand. I was not expecting him to die at all. In my head, I'd always viewed Anakin as like the next Luke, the next leader of the Jedi Order. And like, I thought his death scene was so beautiful, like just opening up to the Force so much that he just like, he became this white light. He like just spirit gets left behind and like the husk of his body remains. It was like such a amazing moment, but such a devastating moment. And I think it really brought home like how dangerous this mission is, like how slim their chance of success is, that like the next great hope of the Jedi Order is
Mhm.
destroyed in the process. And I
Yeah.
think too, in retrospect, looking back on it, it being the middle book in the series, I should have expected something like this to happen, but I was still, at least the first time, completely taken aback when I read it.
Mhm. When I started reading, even with the first book, Truce Bakura, I was just so happy to discover that there's huge world that exists outside of main Star Wars films. And I
Yeah.
started like eating all of these books up. But I'll be honest with you, up until this, even till today, it's amazing body of work. It's amazing literature. I'm so grateful that we get to continue the adventures of our favorite heroes. And I don't mean it in a negative way, but the books, whether it's legends or whether it's canon, prequel movies, sequel movies, nothing ever felt the same like watching the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not just the level of excitement, it's not just the sort of aesthetics that they weren't able to replicate. It's the way that my imagination exploded as a child, limited by just 3 films, and filling out this large, vast galaxy with my own mind, with a teenager's like imagination. And then when somebody else supplies their answer to what things possibly might be like, it never felt quite right. Interesting, exciting, but
Yeah.
never felt quite like the Star Wars. But when I was reading this book, and when we get to Anakin, like never before in Star Wars, things felt real.
Mm.
Not maybe necessarily that Star Wars that I was looking for. Once the innocence of seeing something for the first time is lost, you can't ever go back. You never step into the same river twice, right? But when I got to this crucial point, I'm like, oh crap. They're threatened. Like nobody is out of it anymore. Any Skywalker, any Solo can be killed off now. This is real. Like the gravity of that moment was completely just immense. I was completely starstruck, like yourself. The scene itself was very beautiful, very like romanticized. This Jedi, he's joining with the Force. But at the same time, I felt it's so earned. And it hurts so much because this teenager who's 16 years old, he has his life in front of him. Gone.
Yeah.
Cut off. Which brings me into my next, I think, interesting question. The legacy of 2 characters. You have Anakin Skywalker, who turns into this despicable monster Vader. And then you have Anakin Solo.
Yeah.
How did you reconcile these 2 characters after watching the prequels and after reading this book, and what these 2 characters leave behind?
Yeah. With Anakin Skywalker, so much of it is like you're watching it and you're horrified. You can sort of see the path he's down, and you're like, stop, stop. And he doesn't stop. He keeps going. But then in a beautiful moment, he sacrifices his own life to save his son, because with Anakin, it always seemed to me, Anakin Skywalker, that his family is the most important thing to him. So like it makes sense to me that his family is what saves him in the end. Like his love for his family. It's too much in the prequels, but in Return of the Jedi, it's like that's it. That's what destroys the Emperor and saves everything.
Mm-hmm.
And with Anakin Solo, I feel like, especially in the kids' books, the Junior Jedi Knights books, he's always struggling with that legacy of his name. Like that he has the same name as his grandfather. He's worried that he'll go down the same path. I think Jason has that struggle too. Jason is always worried about the dark side, but for Anakin, it's so real because that's his name, and he doesn't want that to be his legacy. And he has so much potential, but then he goes out in a blaze of glory, and you'll never see him fulfill that potential.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart. It
Mm-hmm.
breaks my heart. It's like I wish I could have seen how his story would have played out if the Vong had never come. But it feels so real to me that he died a teenager, that he died in the midst of war, like protecting his friends and his family.
Hmm. I feel that Anakin Skywalker and Anakin Solo are almost like the sun and the moon, the complete polar opposites, where I sort of never embraced George Lucas's explanation that his original two trilogies are the fall and redemption of Darth Vader. To me, the Star Wars is always about Luke Skywalker and his heroic deed.
Yeah.
Because Vader is too far gone into the dark side that without the exterior help of his son, he would never have rejoined the light side. It is Luke's actions that save his father, not the other way around. What we see in the prequel trilogy is a young man with great potential, regardless whether he was the true chosen one or not. I'm setting that aside. I never bothered with that part of the prequels. You have just this one young man who is clearly strong in the Force. He's powerful, but then his ego gets to him.
Yeah.
And even though he himself realizes that something inside him is broken because he spent 9 years of his life as a slave, the getting into the orbit of the dark side and slowly spiraling towards it was inescapable. And the tragedy of it that he sort of sees that.
Yeah.
Remember, he even expresses that to Padme. He says, like, something is wrong with me. I want more. And I know that's not what the Jedi... And that's, I think, the beauty of the character, regardless how I feel about, prequel trilogy. I think it has absolutely fantastic, beautiful moments in character development. But that's what Anakin Skywalker represents to me. The fall to the dark side. End of story. The rest is Luke's job. With the young Anakin Solo, he, to me, embodies a perfect Jedi. Even with all of his trials and tribulations and being this very impatient teenager and that's teenage angst about everything in life, he delivers, man. Yeah. He's able to overcome all of that teenage noise, mush in his head. He does what the moment demanded. He saves his crew. They perform a great accomplishment for the Jedi. They kill the Voxen Queen and they're out. And he joins, he becomes one with the Force. So I feel like both legacies are very, very interesting because without the dark side, without Anakin Skywalker, you would not have Star Wars. But also without the light side, without Anakin Solo, so they are completely complementary, but in opposition with one another. Leia senses Anakin's passing.
Oh, gosh.
We have another Vong spy, an infiltrator from the New Republic, from Quad, this Vicky Shesh. She attempts to kidnap the newborn Ben Skywalker, Luke's son. In the meantime, the Yuuzhan Vong commander Ram's Kar's Vong forces attack Coruscant full swing.
Yeah.
Mara, Jade, and Luke Skywalker both are shut down over the skies of Coruscant, but guys, don't fret, they survive. Okay. Millennium Falcon comes to rescue them. Chief of State Boris Felia meets his end. He sacrifices himself with a proton bomb. He was intended to kill Tsavong La.
Yep.
He fails to do so, but still, in that explosion, he takes off like 55,000 of the elite Vong warriors' troops with him. Skywalker family and the Solos, they flee Coruscant, and they experience a devastating loss. This is where we end with this book. So I have a couple of closing questions for us. The Yuuzhan Vong tactics, the inside agent Vicky Shesh, and in the way that the Vong managed to influence the New Republic people and the psychological warfare that they wage. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think how they take Coruscant, it's horrible, but it makes sense to me that they use the New Republic's like sympathy and compassion against them, that they like use these refugee ships as like a shield. And I guess I knew that Coruscant was probably going to fall, but how it falls is just, it's a lot. and like, coming off the waves of Anakin dying, Leia's immense grief, like uncontrollable grief.
Yeah.
It's so heavy. Luke and Mara being shot down, and you're worried for their safety, and then Vicky Sesh like trying to kidnap Ben Skywalker, and there's so much stuff going on. It's a lot to follow, and it's so heavy. Like, this is one book where you get to the end and you're like, well, they're alive, but this is a horrible place to end things.
Yeah. And I didn't feel that, how sometimes you have a successful story that you always try to repeat, return to that place, and you never manage to do it. I didn't feel that the authors for the New Jedi Order, because they were communicating with George, they were trading, exchanging ideas, including Anakin Solo's death. It never felt to me like this very dark, twisted ending was to try to replicate the darkness of The Empire Strikes Back, for example, or Revenge of the Sith. It was never trying to go for that extravagant, like, oh, look, things are dark. We got to this point so naturally and organically. That's, I think, what added to the horror of it, because you knew who the key players are. You knew the threat that the Vong represent. And when you get to this point, it was like, yeah, I can see how the war would go this far, and how the new alliance, along with Borskfellia, are taken down a peg, and like they're faced with their own mortality. You're like, yeah, let's see you guys recover from this. This was another side of me. As grievous as the moment was, I was like, all right, you got kicked in your butts. Luke, let's see where you go from here. Let's see how we reorganize our energies and how we defeat these enemies. How did you feel about Borskfellia's sacrifice? Because you and I talked about him, and from many angles that we tried to take a look at this character, he's basically an irredeemable asshole. But how did you feel? Was it this particular sacrifice a redemption arc for his character, or just a desperate attempt at vengeance?
I felt like the whole time I'd been waiting for Borsk to finally pick a side. Like, stop waffling, stop trying to play the middle, like, pick a side. And he finally picked a side, and he, like, I feel like it was very Borsk of him to intend to kill Savon Law and fail, but just the fact that he's able to take out so many in the process just felt satisfying to me. Like, he finally picked a side and he accomplished something. And like, it was with his death, but that's probably best at this point for the New Republic, to like get new leadership. Like, Coruscant's fallen, get rid of the old guard. And if that means that Borsk blows himself up and takes out 50,000 Vong with him, like, I'm very happy about that.
Mm-hmm. I always had issues with this character, not the way that it's written, but with the actual character in the story. And at times I wanted to hate him. Other times I was willing to, pass the olive branch, extend it to him, and try to understand the character. What I really enjoyed, and what his particular death and his sacrifice solidified for me, is that just like every other human being, he's a complex character. Yeah. And I love the fact that after his death, you never quite truly, like, the authors don't spell it out to you exactly what his motivations were.
Yeah.
You can try to figure it out, and there's a certain moment of frustration because you can't, like, shake his dead corpse and, like, what did you try to do here? Like, did you join the good side? You can't do that. And that particular lack of closure only adds volume to this character. You're like, oh man, what a complex dude. Like, what was he going through? Did he finally feel compassion for his fellow New Republic, like, citizens? What was this whole thing about? So he was very, very interesting to me. But the novel ends with Solo's family, tragic loss, kidnapping attempt with a young Ben Skywalker. And our heroes escape burning Coruscant, and, this is a general sense of dread with the story. After you close this book, and you're like, what are your expectations from New Jedi Order series? Like, gee, I think I'm done with this for a while. I need to breathe a little bit. Or were you eager to jump into it and keep reading?
I was a little I feel like emotionally drained and devastated after Star by Star. I think going into it, I didn't expect the amount of pain that I got from it. So it was a little bit of like glad that there was, a break until the next book so I could sort of build my emotional reserves back up. But also, I was excited to see what happened next because this felt like a turning point to me. Like, this had to be the lowest point of the story, and that from this point on, I was interested to see like what's going to happen next. How are they going to build back up from here? Because like Coruscant's fallen, Anakin's dead, they're just fleeing. But it felt like they're gonna regroup, and I was really interested to see what the next phase of the story had in store.
Yeah, I couldn't wait to jump in again. And if I'm not mistaken, guys, it's been so long for me since I read these books, but I believe when I started New Jedi Order, we were past this book. Latter books were already published. I was just catching up to this and trying to figure out, what to read next. But I didn't have to wait long. I think right after I finished this one, I was eager to jump in and to see, like you said, like, okay, let's get on the up climb here. Let's see. I was very interested how the obviously loss would affect the Solos and Skywalkers, but also how Luke, as a Jedi Master with so much responsibility on his shoulders and the lack of leadership of the New Alliance, and you have like Mon Mothma and Leia and Akbar, how all of them are going to regroup and start pushing back against the Vong.
Yeah.
Meg, before I ask our last question, once again, thank you so much for joining me for today's podcast. I really wanted to hear your thoughts. I knew we're going to get emotional. We didn't get quite teary-eyed. Sorry, guys, for full effect. But I knew things were going to get quite emotional for Anakin, and I really wanted to get your thoughts down. And just to share this character with another fan and to hear your thoughts, it's just a beautiful moment. I think it's a beautiful thing when you get to somebody else tells you their experience with these books. So thanks. I had tons of fun speaking with you. But yeah, last question obviously is going to be about Anakin. Before he dies, right, he shares that moment with Tahir Vela. There's like a teenage, like kind of kiss thing happening there. But obviously something was happening there. There was a deeper love, germinating there. How do you feel about Anakin's legacy post-mortem? What is the character's influence later in the series and in larger Star Wars expanded universe?
Yeah. So with Anakin, I think it's how his legacy, like how his sacrifice plays out in how the other characters respond to events. Because Jaina going forward, at least in the New Jedi Order, struggles with the dark side. She's so angry about Anakin's death that she just really, she's able to pull out of it, but she goes really downhill for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, there was a lot of tension between Anakin and Jason here, and Jason, has to come to terms with that. Like, am I responsible for my brother's death? Like, what could I have held the group together better? And with Tahiri's already gone through so much, and she's just starting to figure out her feelings for Anakin, their reciprocal feelings for each other, and then he's gone. So she doesn't just have to process what she went through at the hands of the Yuuzhan Vong, but also his loss multiplied on top of that. And then too, like the young Jedi have to figure out what they're doing going forward, because Anakin had always been their leader and now their leader is gone. So like, who's going to, rise up and fill in that void that he's left behind? And I think too, especially going into the later books, his loss affects them even more than you could have possibly imagined at this stage in the story. Like, it has long-reaching consequences.
Yeah, it feels very, very real because we don't just like flip the page and authors keep on moving with like more Star Wars. They treated this event with so much reverence and respect and just logical continuation of the story that there are repercussions for his death in later books. What I really personally loved a lot, that as our new alliance reorganizes itself, as Jaina, Tahiri, Jason, they go through their personal journeys, loner journeys as individuals trying to figure the universe out, is that Anakin's sacrifice makes everyone stronger.
Yeah.
Anakin's sacrifice is a beautiful moment of, like the Rocky movies, right? When Sylvester Stallone comments on his films, what are they all about? It's not about the victory. It's scraping yourself up from the floor when life is beating you up, right? And learning how to walk again, and learning how to like stand up and say, no, I can do this. And we'll talk about Jason and Jaina, you know, things obviously don't play out exactly how we want them to be. But I felt that he sort of, in a way, gave him this push, right? Because sooner or later, we all pass on from life. But because he was a youth in his most vital years, and he did this one thing that completely changed the outcome of the war, that neither Tahiri Vela, neither Jason Solo, neither Anakin Skywalker, none of them kind of got stuck in their own grief. Yes, they were grieving and they were very angry, but at the same time, they felt the responsibilities. Like, my younger brother sacrificed himself. I don't have the time to, like, I can't afford to sit down and just, like, you know, wallow in my own sorrow. We got an enemy to defeat. Right? And same with Jaina. Like, we got to keep it moving. It's not like we're going to forget our younger brother, but we got to keep push forward. We have to honor his sacrifice. Yeah. That's what his death meant to me. Meg, our dear fans, I think we'll need a little bit of time to, even after this one discussion, to recuperate, recenter our chi, because this is quite emotional. Like, oh, Anakin. It's such a wonderful story. I can't wait to hear some of the comments in the video section below. Let us guys know, what was your personal experience with the new Jedi Order series? How did you feel about Anakin's death? If you are here for some reason for the first time and like we just gave you the grand revelation, I think it's still so valuable to go back and read this new Jedi Order series. Thanks a lot, everyone, for tuning in and checking us out. And Meg, as always, I hope we will get to continue next time. We have a lot more to cover in the new Jedi Order series. Guys, for all of you watching, please do me a huge solid and go check out Meg's channel, Meg's Reviews. I'll leave all the relevant links in the video description. Meg, you do wonderful reviews of all the books. You're so detailed, guys. I highly recommend it. Anyway, thanks for joining me today. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care, everyone.